As you reminded me, Magnus, I taught them. I gave them their reason for being. I cannot desert them. If they are willing to give my dream a chance, then so am I. Today on the Comic Book Report, the Uncanny X-Men Omnibus Volume 3. Stick around and check it out. Greetings all, my name is Dominic and today you're tuning in to the Comic Book Report, where we review comic books and graphic novels so you can get an idea of what to read. And today I'm continuing my look at the Uncanny X-Men Omnibus line with Volume 3. And folks, this is a good one if you've never read it. Not only does it include a ton of Uncanny X-Men issues, we also have the 4-issue Wolverine miniseries, we have the 4-issue Magic miniseries, and we have God Loves, Man Kills. This is a packed book, so let's go ahead and get started. First, some quick facts about today's collection. The issues in this volume were written by Chris Claremont and illustrated primarily by Dave Cockrum. The issues in this volume were published by Marvel Comics beginning in 1981. The volume itself collects the Uncanny X-Men issues 154 through 175, the X-Men Annual issues 6 and 7, Special Edition X-Men number 1, Marvel Graphic Novel number 5, Wolverine issues 1 through 4, and Magic issues 1 through 4. And finally, this oversized hardcover comes in at 1,056 pages. At this time, I'd like to issue a general spoiler warning. I will be flipping through the contents of today's collection and commenting on plot points throughout. You've been advised. Okay, and here's our first look at that oversized hardcover omnibus edition from Marvel Comics. We got a great composite cover here, showcasing a lot of spectacular moments from this collection. I love the cover here, very beautiful. Like most of these omnibus editions from Marvel Comics, it's reproduced in a nice oversized glossy print paper stock. As far as the spine goes, this is the older Marvel Omnibus spine, so it doesn't have the smaller font and the little picture window, so it is a bit inconsistent with my other Uncanny X-Men Omnibuses, other than Volume 4, which I also have in the older spine style. Little irritating, but not too bad on my end. I'm definitely more concerned with what's on the inside. And after taking a look at all the covers here, I'll go ahead and give you a better look at that dust jacket, followed by the under the dust jacket artwork that's included on this omnibus. Unlike some of the other more modern omnibuses, there is not a ton of under the dust jacket artwork. We have a reproduction of sort of the comic logo and the reproduction of the spine printed. Nothing on the back of this one, as you'll see in a moment. But overall, a really nice made omnibus. I really like the dust jacket overall, especially that cover design. I'm really happy with the cover I got for this edition. And wow, I love that we live in a day and age that we're getting subsequent volumes from this incredible run from Chris Claremont. I know that at the time of this recording, they actually have solicited a volume 5 in this Uncanny X-Men Omnibus line, which is very exciting. And now I want to go ahead and give you a quick look at the binding for the book itself. So this omnibus does have a sewn binding. You can see a little bit of an eye. I really have no big complaints with the binding. This is a bigger book. There is a little bit of gutter loss, but overall, no real complaints. I found the binding to be very secure, sturdy, and, it worked really well. No complaints. Alright, and now that we've finished up with all the exterior work and our look at the binding, we can dive into the collection proper. After the front matter here, the titles, the publication information, we have a table of contents, which I always love seeing, pages on the creator, all of those couple early pages, really great stuff. And really comparable to what we see in all the other editions and volumes within this line. So I have to say, for me, this was a real turning point in my reading of X-Men. I really feel like while I enjoyed the earlier Claremont era for Uncanny X-Men, this volume really kicked it up into a next level, in my opinion. I loved the Dark Phoenix saga from the last volume. I loved some of the early stories, even back in Volume 1. But this one really had just consistently high highs for me. I really feel like a lot of the subplots and the narratives and the characters that Chris Claremont's just been building for these last, I don't know, 40, 50 issues are really starting to come to a head. We're really starting to get some just really big payoffs. Some of the character dynamics, relationships are really a lot more flushed out compared to what they were in the early issues of his run. And I really just feel like here, Claremont is really hitting his stride. Something else I really enjoy about this omnibus is I really feel like you also get a really cool variety of storytelling. In addition to all of the X-Men issues, like I mentioned earlier, you also get the graphic novel, The God Loves, Man Kills, which is also one of the most classic X-Men works ever published. In addition to that, we also have that 4-issue Wolverine miniseries from Chris Claremont and Frank Miller, which is one of my favorite little miniseries from Wolverine. I believe it was his first solo miniseries. Really great stuff. I love to see that that was included within this omnibus. There is some double dip in the Wolverine Volume 1 omnibus as well, but I think the more the merrier as far as this omnibus goes, because I know there's some people that collect just Uncanny X-Men and maybe don't collect Wolverine. So it's great to have a rolled in miniseries from Wolverine included where it belongs in the publishing order within these X-Men omnibuses. In addition to that, we also get the 4-issue Magic miniseries. I think that that's actually included in one of the New Mutant omnibuses, so similar deal there. But again, I really like that the Uncanny X-Men omnibus line can almost be like a one-stop shop for a lot of these great little side miniseries that tie in so directly with this X-Men run from Claremont. Outside of the issues that this omnibus collects, I did want to focus a little bit on some of the storylines we can expect from this volume that I really enjoyed. We had the first appearance of the Brood, these kind of horrifying alien race of kind of just predatory aliens in the X-Men universe. The storyline there was absolutely fantastic. I think some of the notable appearances and character work we got in those issues as well. Wolverine and Carol Danvers were used just absolutely incredibly. I really loved just kind of the horror and the fear and the kind of science fiction thriller aspects of that whole Brood saga. Really, really incredible stuff. I really loved that. This volume also kind of has the emergence of the New Mutants team, which sort of cross over a little bit with the X-Men team. There's some really good issues there that covered that. And again, the Marvel graphic novel number 5, The God Loves, Man Kills, is included, which is just one of the best X-Men works of all time. I really think that that standalone graphic novel included in this collection can really serve as like the perfect distillation of the X-Men franchise in comics form. What I mean by that is I think that if you were looking for elements that made a good X-Men book, everything, I think, is included in that graphic novel number 5. I think that for anyone who wanted to check out the X-Men, read God Loves, Man Kills. Recommend it to friends. That is the X-Men essence in one storyline. And I think to read it again with fresh eyes for when I read this omnibus, I really loved it. I haven't read this in years and years and years, so rereading it, I really just see how powerful it is and how much it just cuts to the core of what this team is, who these characters are, and what the relationship is that the mutants have with the rest of humanity. I think, again, it just pitch perfectly captures what this whole franchise ought to be about. And honestly, rereading it, it was even more outstanding than I remembered. I also think the art in it is absolutely gorgeous and really punches out of this collection as well. And this collection already has fantastic art throughout. Not to be outdone, we also again have that Wolverine miniseries from Chris Claremont and Frank Miller, where Wolverine goes to Japan. I really love this. For fans of Wolverine's character, or even some of the Wolverine movies, this is essential reading. I think that it was just such a great, just added layer to Wolverine's character. We get that kind of fierce, like, animalistic samurai that just that really captures who Wolverine is, and we see those elements within the cultural backdrop of Japan, and I just think it's done super well. I think that that story absolutely holds up, and it was a joy to revisit that as well. Again, that 4-issue miniseries is included here and in the Wolverine Omnibus number 1, but either way, you gotta read that story. It is a fantastic Wolverine story. Another storyline I want to touch on in this collection is that 4-issue Magic miniseries I mentioned. It has to do with, yes, you guessed it, the mutant Magic, Ileana Rasputin, and what happened to her when she was in kind of the dark dimension. This storyline for me is a bit too dark. Her powers kind of borderline on a little bit too edgy and kind of demonic for me to really enjoy. But this is a really important miniseries in the history of this character, and I know it goes on to set up future adventures for both the X-Men and the New Mutants, and I think it's incredible that they included that within this collection. If you ever wanted to learn about some of the origins of Ileana Rasputin, the mutant Magic, this miniseries is a very foundational cornerstone for this character. Beyond just the actual storylines included in this volume, and there's more than even what I've mentioned here, but even more than that, the art as well is absolutely outstanding throughout. Dave Cockrum does quite a bit of it, but there are several other artists on this book. I mentioned Frank Miller, but there's even more than just them. I think that the art is some of the most top-notch X-Men I've read, especially from this period of time. I think that all of the pencil work was really clean, the character models were all super distinct and lively, and I feel like even the coloring was next level. I don't know if it was because I noticed all of these battles through space and alien worlds and scenarios and dimensions, but I really feel like there was such a good sense of place. The coloring was vibrant, lively, and just was shocking at sometimes. I really just enjoyed also just seeing the characters develop. I mentioned this a little bit earlier on in the video, but I feel like by this point in Claremont's run, he had such a commanding grasp of these characters and just really understood their voices. I think that at this point, I also see this team as, well, what they are, a team. You see the dynamics, you actually see their friendships emerge and become kind of center stage in some of their conflicts, and I really loved that. There were just so many twists and turns in this volume that this one really stood out for me as just one that was super, super memorable in an already amazing run. I also, once again, love the inclusion of the Starjammers. We also have, of course, as part of the Starjammers, we have Cyclops' father. I just love the way that those characters show up for their kind of interstellar, space-traveling sort of adventures. They're sort of this almost pirate, sort of mercenary group in space, and I just love whenever they show up. Again, just a really well-done collection here. Going back to the Brood issues, I think for me, the idea of kind of a vicious, predatory alien species, it's really reminiscent of, well, the film franchise Alien, but I think that seeing X-Men sort of nod to this whole phenomenon, it was really cool to see. I like to see what was different as well as they took a spin on that kind of trope. I love that these Brood kind of, would embed themselves in the X-Men and kind of take over in like a creepy body snatcher slash, I don't even know, like kind of like the Thing sort of way as well. Really insidious and freaky, and I think that the way that those aliens mess with their minds and kind of their bodies, there was this body horror element to that whole saga, and I know that the Brood always come back for the X-Men and some of the other heroes in the Marvel Universe, so to see their start in the pages of this omnibus was a real treat, and I think that their first appearance is absolutely haunting, and I see why these were characters that were returned to and are returned to over and over again in the history of Marvel Comics. I like that this volume also continues to develop Kitty Pryde. I mentioned this on previous videos when I've reviewed the Uncanny X-Men Omnibus volumes 1 and 2, but I really think that Kitty Pryde is sort of the pride and joy, so to speak, of Chris Claremont. You can kind of just feel like this is just his baby. Of all the characters in X-Men, I really do wonder if Kitty Pryde is his favorite. She's one of the first, newer mutants that shows up that he establishes into the team. She's also the youngest. They capture her kind of right at the beginning of her figuring out she's a mutant and what to do about it, and they kind of raise her into this hero. It's just really great. And honestly, before reading the early Claremont stuff, I didn't have a really strong opinion on Kitty Pryde, and now she's one of my favorite mutants as well. This was a really groundbreaking volume for her. We have that issue that starts with Professor X is a jerk in this book, and I think that it's just a really pivotal time. I mentioned earlier that this is around the era where the New Mutants get their start, so that's kind of the X-Babies team, or sort of the younger class of mutants that kind of show up while the X-Men are off-world, which we see in this volume. And basically, once New Mutants are established, there's this moment where Professor X wants to move Kitty Pryde down to the New Mutants rather than the X-Men proper. Sort of like getting demoted from varsity to JV, and she's so offended by that, so hurt, and so she ends up sort of being kind of a floater character. She kind of dabbles in New Mutants, she does help out here and there, but ultimately she does prove herself to be worthy of being X-Men status, to be on the X-Men team, and I think that's really powerfully done. I like that she's not just on New Mutants because she's younger. She actually fights and proves herself that no, she needs to be on the A-team. She needs to be on the X-Men. And so I really feel like this was a really good establishing volume for Kitty Pryde. So for fans of that character, there are some must-read essential issues within this volume that I would highly recommend. Now I'll go back to the God Loves, Man Kills graphic novel, since we are in the midst of flipping through that right now. For those that don't know, like I mentioned, this is sort of a distillation of every good X-Men story, I think, here. It ultimately evolves into a classic humans versus mutants story. We have a lot of tension between Professor X and Magneto, and whose dream is really right, whose vision of how mutants exist within this world is correct. Is it Xavier's dream that humans and mutants can coexist peacefully and thrive on the world together? Or is it Magneto's point of view that, hey, mutants are the next stage in human evolution. They are the superior race that will ultimately win out. And at the end of the day, he's just not going to stand for his people being just, spat upon, killed, persecuted for no real good reason in his eyes. There's a lot of just politics in this, a lot of just prejudice and hatred in this graphic novel, and it's really kind of striking and shocking reading it because you get to see kind of how much the mutants are despised within the Marvel Universe and how they have to rise against it and how they have to kind of try to make the better choices, be the better people, choose the more noble path. But a lot of those ideologies are put to the test throughout the pages of this graphic novel, and it just really brings a lot of conflicts to a head. Like I said, it really explicitly shows a lot of the tension that we feel and see throughout the Claremont era of X-Men, and some before, some after, certainly. But again, it just does it in such a compelling way. The art is really standout. When you're reading this omnibus, you're very aware when this graphic novel shows up because there's a really big art change. There's a tonal change. It's just, again, something that you have to read for yourselves to really get the impact of. And now that we're flipping through the Wolverine issue as well, I'll talk a little bit more about that. I'm a big Wolverine fan. I did cover this Wolverine Omnibus Volume 1 that included these issues, I think in an unboxing a while ago. But these are some of my favorite issues. They were not included in the Madripoor Nights Wolverine Epic Collection that I also reviewed on this channel, and I was hoping they would be. So when they were in the Omnibus, I was ecstatic. When I picked up this X-Men Omnibus and saw that they were again included, I was really happy. I don't know why these issues aren't included in that Volume 1 Wolverine Epic Collection, but if you're in search of these issues, sometimes they publish this kind of standalone, but you can definitely find them in the pages of that first Wolverine Omnibus, or of course this Omnibus before you. And that 4-issue miniseries, again from Chris Claremont and Frank Miller, is just a great story of Wolverine going to Japan. He kind of has to fight these sort of like gang ninja kind of people and kind of show the noble samurai spirit he has as a Westerner, but he kind of honors the traditions and the culture within Japan. He falls in love with this Japanese woman who's really involved with sort of some crime families, and there's just a lot of conflict, a lot of tension. But I think for people that don't love Wolverine, who read the X-Men and kind of maybe tolerate him, I know a lot of people love him like myself, but there's some that really don't click with Wolverine. They see the kind of animalistic side of him and they're just not maybe as interested. I would really encourage you to check out something like this miniseries. Again, anything that shows Wolverine's sort of like deep heart and noble nature, it really just adds, if nothing else, a kind of sympathy or empathy for this character that can sometimes be thought of as nothing more than a brute or a beast. To see his heart, to see his nobility, it really just helps you just love and click with the character. I know it did with me. To revisit these issues again, it's always a joy. And the 4 issues actually lead back into the X-Men title, where the X-Men join Wolverine in Japan, and there's a pretty wild little arc there that's like a good epilogue from his standalone series. So again, I love the way that this omnibus is mapped. I love that they threw in the miniseries. I love that they threw in the graphic novels, because it all kind of helps the broader context of the X-Men storytelling at this time. Because again, we're going to start to see more Wolverine solo stuff. We're going to start to see the New Mutants team emerge. We're going to start to see all of these things. And so the fact that we get some of these miniseries, we get some of these other issues, in addition to the Uncanny X-Men issues, it just gives you the fuller scope of what was happening at the time in the world of our favorite mutants. Honestly, there's so much more I could even say about this book. There's even more stories than I've shared, but I want to leave some mystery for all of you to enjoy. I think that we're starting to get to the point in X-Men as well that while these are not modern comics, they don't feel as dated as the earlier Claremont run. I think the art is really leveled up, the narratives and the characterizations have really started to modernize, so I think people that are maybe just fans of more modern comics would still really enjoy this era and onward from Chris Claremont. It's really just spectacular stuff. Again, I know some of the earlier volumes held like the Dark Phoenix saga and Days of Future Past, which again are some of the best X-Men stories out there. But what I really think I like about this volume, even though it does include some essential reading like graphic novel number 5 and some of these miniseries, even the run-of-the-mill storylines in this, it's like the average is even so much higher. So yes, it doesn't have the Dark Phoenix saga. Yes, it doesn't have Days of Futures Past, but even its worst stories are still absolutely great to read. And I don't know if I could have said that for some of the earlier omnibus volumes. Almost everything in this book is a hit for me. Again, I don't love the Magic miniseries, but I know why people like it, and it is a pivotal sort of origin story for this character. But again, overall, so many of these issues are just absolutely spectacular. I had a blast reading them, and in some cases revisiting. The art is super sharp, and I think that this leads perfectly into all of the adventures we see in Volume 4. And after all the issues, like all the other good Marvel omnibuses, we have a healthy amount of extras, we have some great artwork, we have some cover art. Again, we have a good handful of that at the back of the edition, which I always love seeing. It's the bonus features, it's the special features at the end. I love to see all the extras in this oversized format, and I'm just really treated. Having loved this book so much, to get the extras on top of that is just an added joy. Another great omnibus from the Merry House of Marvel. And now it's time to give this book a grade. For not only including the Uncanny X-Men issues, but also including several popular miniseries and a standalone graphic novel at the time, this omnibus is packed out with some of my favorite X-Men stories of all time. For this reason and more, the Comic Book Report is happy to give the Uncanny X-Men Omnibus Volume 3 from Marvel Comics an A. That's right, I'm pulling out an A for the X-Men Omnibus Volume 3. Some incredible stories, God Loves, Man Kills, the Wolverine miniseries from Chris Claremont and Frank Miller. There is just a treasure trove of riches in this volume that I consider a must-read for all X-Men and Marvel comic fan out there. Some great Wolverine stories and things that will just have you remembering why these characters have been around for so long. Have you read this omnibus? Let me know in the comments below. And until next time, this has been the Comic Book Report. Don't forget to leave a like and a comment. And if you haven't yet, please consider subscribing to my channel. Until next time, have a good one.